family, it's season 6, and I'm super excited to bring Theology in 30 from my personal platform to the Hope TV. And so I want to pause right now to thank our executive producer, my pastor, Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr., for this opportunity to have dialogue around theology, preaching, and life. Also want to thank our marketing and media ministry team, all those who serve in some capacity with our Hope TV platform. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It has been an exciting season so far. Y'all, I told you that Theology in 30 was going to be engaging, that it was going to be relevant for where you are, and that it would be encouraging and empowering. And I believe that we have delivered. Y'all tell me if I understood the assignment. So, you know what I need you to do. First of all, we want to grow our viewership, so we need your help. Will y'all help me tonight? I need you to take this video from our social media platform and post it on your social media platforms so that others can enjoy this amazing content. And then I need you to follow us on Instagram at The Hope TV or on our Facebook page for the House of Hope Atlanta. Y'all, I am so excited about tonight's show. By way of introduction, I want to share from my own ministry journey that there's always been this dance, this delicate dance happening between singing and preaching. And so I grew up singing in choirs, and then I started preaching, but I was still singing. And so preaching and singing have always been tied together in some way in my ministry. And so tonight's show is about music, singing and preaching, the pairing of music and ministry. And our guest tonight, I said tonight, would have to be the most gifted brothers that I know who both sings and preaches. Y'all, he is one of my favorite singers, hands down. And so Elder Kenneth D. Duke is our guest for tonight. He's a native of Dallas, Texas. He journeyed to Miami, Florida at the age of 3, and he's been actively involved in promoting godliness wherever he goes. At the age of 5, he accepted Christ. At the age of 16, he acknowledged his call to ministry and accepted that call. He's a graduate of Morehouse College. Come on, I need all my Morehouse fam to say something in the comments. And he has pastored for several years, lending his unique gifts of leadership and administration. And he's been just leading so many souls to the kingdom. He's an outstanding preacher and teacher, and he grows in grace and in the knowledge of the Lord as he inspires others to be their best selves. He's a powerful gospel singer, and he credits his vocal quality to his mother, Mrs. Avis Stevenson Petty. So, Theology in 30 family, will y'all join me in welcoming Elder Kenneth D. Duke? Say hello to everybody, Elder Duke.
Hello, man. I'm glad to be on this show, and I'm proud of you, and I'm honored. I'm both excited, but then also I have jitters because I highly respect you and this platform, and I hope you guys are blessed by the content that will be shared tonight. Thank you for the invite. I owe you.
Man, whatever. I just thank you for accepting the invitation. We're going to jump right in because Theology in 30 moves so fast. And so I
Yeah.
want to start with this question. Tell us a little bit about your call. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you know that you were called to preach? I mean, 16, we're both child preachers, right? So how did you know that you were called to preach?
You know, my family's weird. Of course, you know that. You've been around my family. At the age of around 14, 15, God just started doing weird things with me. And of late, you know, he's still doing the same thing, but in a different way. So around age 14, 15, we off line, we were talking about my father graduating and going to Bishop College. And so at the time, he would invite, you know, guys like Bishop Victor T. Curry, your pastor, Dr. E. Dewey Smith, and Freddie Haynes, Jeffrey Johnson. And so around 14, 15, of course, you know, you mentioned that I sing. I was singing and doing my thing, but I saw myself preaching. But, you know, I'll be transparent. I wasn't making the best grades, okay? Play football. I was a football jock. Great at football, but not making the best grade. So when I heard my dad, guys like Bernard Yates, Freddie Haynes, Jeffrey Johnson, Bishop Curry, E. Dewey Smith, I'm like, there's no way I can get in the pulpit and preach because I know they made good grades. I'm making terrible grades. So the enemy started whispering in my ear, you can't do this. But every day I saw myself preaching and developing sermons. And what began to happen was I started dreaming about it. And then God would wake me up every morning until I accepted my call for a year and a half at 4 p.m. And so I got tired, I got tired, I got tired. And I, went to my father and I said, I think that the Lord has called me to preach. And my father, he's old school. He said, no, you don't need to think, you need to know. And so I prayed about it, prayed about it, prayed about it. I said, Dad, I know that I've been called to preach. And get this, the enemy was, still whispering, man, you're not doing well in school. I'd struggled educationally. And so I accepted, and I gave God a yes. And let me tell you this, and I've told my church this, I tell it across the country when I share, whether I'm preaching or singing, whenever I've given God a yes, I mean, God is just taking care of the rest. I gave him a yes, and my ministry has just boomed, from there. I've literally preached the width and the breadth of our country. Now, I'll be honest. She mentioned that, I'm a good preacher, great preacher, whatever.
Yes,
I
you
don't,
are.
I listen, in the beginning, I struggled. But because I gave God yes, I literally stood in pulpits I didn't deserve to stand in. So that's a little bit about my call story. And to be honest, I'm still growing as a preacher. I'm learning from people like Pastor Jen and others. It's been a unique journey, but I'm here.
So a couple of things. First of
Yeah,
all, I'm glad you did not listen to any of those voices because your perspectives and just your approach to ministry is really unique, it's exciting, it's fresh. So I'm glad you
yeah,
didn't listen to those voices. And
yeah,
to someone who may be watching, who may be new to ministry, I want you to know that God calls you in the package that you are in. Even your struggles and the things that we're insecure about, God called all of that too. So let me
yeah,
let me move on because you know how that can get. So let me
yeah.
let me move on. I will never forget the first time I heard you sing the hymn, Jesus Never Fails. Lord, when I tell you, I almost, let me see, I almost knocked the people beside me down trying to get to the aisle because what I've learned about being a church baby and being a kid who grew up hearing hymns is that the way that we hear the hymns and the way that we're able to finesse the hymns when we sing them and draw them out, all of that
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
from our tradition and from just growing up hearing hymns. And so I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but you know what I'm gonna ask you to do.
Oh, man.
Really quickly, really quickly. No, real, because I need, we may have some people watching who don't know what I'm talking about when I say you are just as much of a formidable preacher as you are a singer. So can you sing just the first line that Jesus never fails for us? Because I want our audience to hear how you interpret the hymn. Because we hear hymns, but the way that we sing them out of our tradition is completely different. So just the first line, can you sing that for us really quick?
Listen, I'll do it for you. But you put me on the spot, but I'll do
Uh,
it for you. I love you. I
Thank you,
love
my.
you.
I love you too.
Yes, thank you. Jesus never fails. Jesus never fails. Heaven and earth shall pass away, away, oh, away, oh, Jesus never, never fail. Then the old saints would say, I tried him. He never fails. Have you tried him? He never fails. Heaven and earth shall pass away. Ooh, Jesus never fails. God bless you.
All right, we're going to Benedict. We're going to end Theology in 30 right
I
there.
feel him. I
That's a
feel
good
him.
place to end the show. No. Okay, so I thank you for that. First of all, your voice is just as powerful, the skill, all of it,
Thank you.
just as much as when I first heard you at like 15. We were 15 the first
Yeah,
time
we
I
were
heard you.
kids. Yeah, we were
Man,
kids.
and it's just amazing. So let's stay right there. Let's stay right there.
Okay.
So now that the audience has heard you sing, they know what I'm talking about. How does your ear for music inform your preaching style? Because it, as I listened to you, I heard so much. I
Yeah.
heard, the deacons back in the day who would draw the notes out. I heard some Sam Cooke. I heard, oh my goodness, I heard so much in you singing that hymn that, okay, that has to inform your preaching in some way, having a keen musical ear. So I know you hoop.
Yeah.
So and that's what I'm studying in the world's only program for Black preaching and sacred rhetoric, right? That's part of my
That's good.
dissertation. Shameless plug. So talk to me
Get
about
it.
how having that musical ear, how does that enter the preaching moment with you, especially in the practice of hooping?
It makes me sensitive. I mean, this as a vocalist. I'm sensitive to certain notes, the timing of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm preaching, and because I'm more manuscript, I,
Mm-hmm.
the other day I was listening to a sermon that I preached late. I told you I'm, in a faith season, and so I'm preaching, and I I pay attention to cadence. There's a rhythm, there's a beat. Like, we were talking about Fred Haynes. Like when I hear him, I don't just, listen to the content. There's a rhythm, there's a beat, and so I'm sensitive to that. And there are times where, even when I'm hooping, Pastor E. Dewey Smith talks about getting on that nerve.
Yes.
There's a you know, like this was about 2 weeks ago when I hooped. Of course, I got my content. Won't he make a way out of no
Oh yes.
way? Right? So they're connecting, with the sermon, with the lyrics of the sermon, but they're also connecting with the note, and I know it, and I can feel when we're connected. All right, because I'm sensitive to rhythm, beat, sound, when I've gotten on that nerve, and so there are people that when I don't hoop, they say, "Well, why didn't you hoop?" And I'm like, "Hey, man, I had a really good sermon, man. But they like a lady walked up to me and said, "It's the sound, it's the it's the lyrics, but that sound captures my attention. It's something about your sound, and I'm aware of it. I can tell. Sometimes I can't explain the connection, but I'm aware of when I'm connecting because they're looking at me and I'm looking at them, and we're looking at each other, and I'm hitting that note. And I know when I say, "Won't he do it?" You know what I mean? I feel it, and they feel it, and we're on one accord. And I think that's what's powerful about the Black church. And the hooper. We're not just hooping, just for show, but there's a connection, and I love that connection. I mean, when you're dating, there's a connection. When there's chemistry, and hooping. It's not just jazz, it's not just soul, but it's a connection that the preacher has with his or her audience, and it's amazing.
As you can see, those oxtails browned up pretty good. Nice and tender.
Part-time job, full-time hustle, all-time shero to all of us. You nurture, we listen. You teach, we thrive. You lift our spirits, but we've got to lay down the truth. It's time for you, our shero, to stretch for the stars. A free online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Start saving more for retirement so you can feel prepared and live your life to the fullest. Visit aceyourretirement.org.
We see that you founded something, an organization called Black Girls in Cyber.
So I started these Facebook Live series called Black Girls in Cyber, and I would invite different African American women who were working in different aspects of the field to come and share their stories, very similar to as I'm doing now, and what their journey was, and to just really create more industry awareness around what this looks like.
Let me jump in here with Dolan Hubbard, who is really a part of my dissertation, my research. He says that the Black sermon is the signature of the children of the African diaspora that
Got you.
fills both eye and ear, right, with words that dance just beyond the limits of our vocality or our communication. So there's something
Got you.
that happens in Black sermon that cannot be verbalized, because it is rhythmic, because it is musical, and it connects with people. Frank
Yes.
Thomas says that rhythm teaches. So I'm going to ask this because I don't get a chance a lot of times to talk to somebody who is a hooper like you, but who is
Right.
also a singer like you. So I'm going to ask all my questions tonight. So here we go. When you are memorizing, we know that there are 5 canons of rhetoric, and one of those canons is memory.
Got you.
And when you are memorizing a sermon, do you teach yourself the sermon with certain cadences and rhythms?
Yes,
Your sermon preparation process. Talk to me about that.
I do. There's a beat. And it's weird. My twin brother and I, we were talking about this today. I heard this piece that one of our preaching mentors was, talking about how in the 20th century preaching was slower. My granddad's generation, they were slower in
Yeah.
their pace, and then the hip hop culture changed that speed. And so my dad's generation, guys like your pastor, when we listen to Jake's preaching, sped up, and now our generation learned from the generation that sped preaching up. And it appears that millennials are listening different.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
kind of between, speed preaching, lecturing. Maybe I should call it precturing, if you understand what I'm saying. And
Yes.
so, but I do have like this beat, and I'll be honest with you, that beat comes from Fred Haynes, because when I first heard Dr. Haynes, man, I liked the way he bum 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 bum. It was, for me, it was hip hop, and
Yes.
I love hip hop. My favorite rapper is Big and Pac. It was all a
Okay.
dream. And so I had that beat, and I still sometimes have that beat. Especially when I need to speed up, because the only challenge with pressuring is, we only have about 20 minutes to reach, this, to reach a lot of the people that we're preaching to, part of our generation. And so there are times where I am, a little faster than just having a conversation. And that when I'm going, faster, or faster than just, having a conversation, that beat is sort of like Fred Haynes, bum, 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 bum. But then I know how to stop. You know what I mean? So there is a beat, and I train myself as I'm memorizing my sermon, to have that beat, so, yeah.
Yes. So you answered the question perfectly.
Yeah.
And another question came to mind as you were speaking. So we know that rhythm teaches, and we use this cadence to kind of internalize the sermon. So I want to ask you this. Has there ever been a time, okay, that you have been up and you got thrown off? Because that happens to me depending on the music that's behind me in my hoop. Some things can throw you off. So so
Now,
has there
you
ever
talking
been
about
a time
hooping, or just you talking
in
hooping,
your
or just?
in your hooping?
Yeah, it happened to me Sunday, and I
Wow,
stopped.
you
Yeah, I mean, I hooped
stopped.
2 weeks ago. I did. But
Okay.
I stopped gracefully. You know. I knew how to just, bring it to a stop. And then it's what my father called the afterglow. I'm having a
Yes.
conversation with them, and going over my points, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I started off, I felt, with a good note, and I'm getting into it. I'm connecting, I feel, and then, of course, the organist did his thing, and it kind of threw me off. And to be honest, I'm 40. I ain't as young as I used to be. So uh I'm not
Listen.
I mean, we're still young. We're still young, but I just, you know,
Ooh.
sometimes I tell you what, some of the best hoops I put out, I've had a headache afterwards. And so I don't
Mhm.
hoop as often as I, when I was younger. But when I do, I need the organist to, let's be on one accord. You know, if
So
not,
that has happened.
yeah.
Yeah, if not what?
You say what?
If not what? Finish your statement.
If not, I'll stop. If I'm
Yeah.
saying if we're not on one accord, I'll stop.
Yeah.
And not disrespectful, because I want to put this out. In the South Florida area, the musicians know that I am a friend, and just across the country, I'm a friend of musicians. I'm not a disrespectful pastor, but if we're not on the same page, then I know how to bring it to an end.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, when you talked about being 40, like I almost fell out of this chair
Yeah, we're getting
because
older.
well, don't tell, you know what? Well, if we don't tell them, they'll never
I'm
know.
gonna do it. I'm
But
gonna do it. I want to do it. I feel it.
but no,
I know how old you
but no,
are.
but no, listen though. Like I was preaching Sunday and I always start in F. And
Okay.
typically if I'm in good voice, what we call good voice, I can modulate 6 times.
Oh wow.
But to your point, now that I am nearing 40, right? Because I ain't 40 yet. Now that I'm nearing 40, it's I can do like three modulations, three, and of course, half steps. I can do about 3 or 4, and then like we start getting into that headache kind of
Yeah.
range.
Yeah.
And so I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago about
Yeah.
the millennial or the Gen Z ear, because we know
Right.
there's Generation X, there's Generation Y, there's
Yeah.
Gen
Yeah.
Z.
Yeah.
There's all of these different subgroups. When we talk about millennial, we use it as a junk drawer term, but the
Yeah.
demographics within that group are very, very diverse. We're a very diverse group. So here it is. Major question. Do you
Okay.
think hooping will go out of style? Like that the younger generations will eventually say no more hooping?
That's a really good question. I so my daughter's a singer, and to be honest with you, she can sing way better than me. And the generation is supposed to take it higher. My
Absolutely.
daughter, when I was 13, I wanted to hear my father go get it. My daughter, she doesn't have a desire for it. She doesn't even like. I mean, she's into worship. She's a worshiper. But she's not into it. That's a really good question. And the reason why I'm pausing, because I had a conversation actually with Dr. E. Dewey Smith. We were talking about preaching. This was last year sometime, and he made a statement, because a lot of spaces that I'm going in, not most, a lot of spaces that I go into where it's millennials, Gen Z, and then some Generation X. I'm realizing that they don't want the traditional sounding pastor, where when we're trying to find it, and I don't need you, yeah,
Oh, God.
because that's grandmother's way of church, right? But he said something to me that blessed me. He said, Ken, I wish you can see what's on my wall. It says, "Be you." He said, "Duke, man, Black folk are not monolithic. All millennials and Gen Z, they're not monolithic." He said, "Man, there are times where I preach across the country, and we know he preaches, a lot of places." He said, "Man, your
Absolutely.
generation and a generation younger than um, younger than your generation, and the next generation, man, they're going in, they're shouting." And he said, "Man, I was somewhere and I heard a guy, man, like 19 years old, tell me, 'Come on up, Reverend, come on up.'" you know, so. I think it just depends on context, and one of my skill sets is a pastoral care. And I think that part of the pastor slash preacher is to learn his or her audience, who we're preaching to. And there are times where they'll push you. Like this was 2 years ago, right before the pandemic. I was in South Carolina. And in my mind, I just wasn't going to do it, but they were pushing me. And oh my gosh, we had a good time. And then they invited my twin brother back the next year, and he was like, "Man, those folk are on fire for God." So it just depends on what pocket you're in. So
My Shiro doesn't always wear a cape, but she always has time for a hug, a smile, for going the extra mile. My Shiro stretches every dollar, puts in long hours, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. When you're ready to retire, we want you to be able to enjoy it. It's time to start saving now. A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Visit aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
Today, I got something special for you. We're gonna be making a southern staple. Now with some sauteed squash and onions. Okay guys, we got cabbage is just about done.
I love this. I love this. I
yes,
didn't want to take you so far into music, but the conversation has kind of gone
no,
there.
it's all good.
Because I do want you to get a chance to talk to us about your ministry ethos and, what beyond the hooping, what beyond the music is interesting to you. So if we can, since it is Theology in 30, let's talk a
Yeah,
little bit about the theology in your preaching, because I've heard you preach several times. And every time I hear you, I do walk away with a big idea. I walk away with whatever concept you started out with that you wanted to communicate. It's always very clear. Your preaching is very clear. And so I
thank
want
you.
to ask you, is there a central theological claim that comes forward in your preaching? Like when you look at your last 5 sermons, is there anything about God that you said that just came up again and again?
I find myself of late, I want to redeem oppressed people, even in scripture. Um, Women,
Yes.
that story about the woman at the well. I've heard that preached. We've heard it preached when we were kids, and we still hear it. And that woman has been demonized. I've literally heard people call her, loose words, and we'll
Mm,
just keep it PG, right?
mhm.
And not that they were, rated R in the pulpit, but they made her look like she was loose. And when we study like the culture that she lived in, women didn't have rights, right? Her husband could have died. We do know that when a man got tired of a woman, he can throw her away. And so she's a victim until she meets Jesus. And Jesus, even though, let's just say, the men that she, was married to, they didn't see her worth. But when Jesus saw her, man, he saw her worth and gave her worth, and I tend to bring stuff out like that, David,
Yeah.
David is an unlikely suspect, his dad doesn't think much of him, and he's just out there being a shepherd boy, but God sees this man's heart. Okay, doesn't have the resume that his brothers have, but God sees this man's heart. And I like of late, I'm connecting with people who have good hearts. Matter of fact, I want a church full of people who have good hearts. Now, I'm
Come on.
not saying, huh? I'm not saying come to
Come
church,
on.
with the smallest dress on, but I'm more concerned about your hearts. Because 9 years of pastoring, you want to know what I've learned? A lot of people that wear suits and know the tradition of the church, man, those were the main people causing me and other pastors hell. Can I say that on your show?
You can.
But the
Yes.
thank you. But the people who we looked past, said that they were nobody. These were the people, who added great value to my ministry. And so, in my preaching, I want to redeem. I want to, even like Potiphar's wife. I'm sort of dealing with that right now. Matter of fact, I texted Art Jackson last night. I was like, "Yo, I'm dealing with this Genesis chapter 45." And so, man, I need you to help me look at Potiphar's wife, and I'm not saying she wasn't wrong, but her husband didn't have a male part. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Maybe she was forced into a situation, and Joseph is a man of integrity. Why wouldn't she want a man of integrity? You know what I mean? But you know, she's rejected, and people don't like to be rejected. She's in an unfortunate situation. And we know the story. She lies on Joseph, and she's wrong for that. But I want to stop at how she got there. Not to say that I know, but I want to bring that out. You know what I mean? Like, she's been
Yeah.
oppressed. You know, she has needs that her husband can't meet. And though Joseph can meet them, that's not his assignment. But I understand. You get what I'm saying? I understand Potiphar's wife, and so I always want to know why. Howard Thurman says that if you're going to make a difference in someone's life, you need to find out their beginning, so that you can minister to their right now. Bill Hybel, in his book called Walk Across the Room, he says that if we're going to be effective at doing 21st century evangelism, he says we have to do ministry in 3D: develop relationships, discover stories. Woo!
Yes.
Discover
Come
their
on.
stories. Even like with the LGBTQ community, I'm all man, right? But I want to hear your story before I
Yeah.
condemn you to hell. Matter of fact, that's not even my assignment to condemn you to hell in the first place. My job is to build a relationship with you and let God do the transformation. All right. And then the third D is discern next steps. You know what I mean? And so my preaching of late is I wanna redeem the oppressed, poor people, the list goes on. Uneducated people, people that have been counted out. You're going to hear that in my message. The last 5 sermons, that's what I'm addressing. And I'm finding those people in scripture. And I'd say, I know that you've sinned, but I understand you. I understand. And, if you were born a certain way, you can be born again. I do apologize for
I
going
love.
that long, but I get passionate about
No,
that.
no, no. No, that was perfect. Dr. Valerie Bridgman, who was my Old Testament rhetoric, or my rhetoric of the Hebrew Bible professor, she says that we need more preaching and teaching from the margins. And I
Yes,
think that's what
yes,
you're talking about. Miguel de la Torre, this whole idea that there is something to be said from the sidelines, right?
that's it.
And so I really appreciate your approach. I think it's powerful. I think it is something that's needed in a time like this, where
Yes,
Black bodies have become sites of struggle and our breath has been weaponized. It is
yes,
so important that we preach a gospel that shares with us our role and our place in the kingdom and in God, that we are a part of the God story, right?
Yes.
And not only are we part, but we're kings, we're queens. Come on. So
Yes,
I love your approach. I love your approach. Now, this is the part of Theology in 30 that I hate. This is the part that that just, it's the worst part of Theology in 30. We only have 4 minutes. So,
oh, yeah.
so here's what I need you to do. I need you to share with us just whatever you want our viewing audience to know about you as a pastor, as a preacher, as a singer, a word of wisdom to someone who may be like you and I, who is both singer and preacher and who doesn't know how to wed both gifts and how to make both gifts work. So just kind of leave us with some words of wisdom, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah, you know what? And you can identify with this, and then you know me. You can do both. You can preach and sing. I grew up I'm fourth generation preacher, and I grew up around preachers that can preach. She mentioned that singing is a gift of mine, and it is. But there used to be a time where being a preacher and a singer, it wasn't celebrated in a lot of our Baptist circles. And so I would sing, and then, I would preach, and then I didn't like at one point, people would walk up to me and mention more about my singing than my preaching. And
Yes.
so over the last several years, I've devoted myself to becoming a better communicator of the gospel. Now I'm at a point where, and I just think the culture is at a point where we're embracing both, like, guys like Mike LeClure and E. Dewey Smith, guys that are doing both. And then who else? We have Paul Morton, who, obviously, did both. And so I'm inspired. And you ought to be inspired. If you have gifts, whatever gifts you have, use them all. Man, that's what God has been telling me in this season. Man, use all of the gifts that I've given you. Don't worry about what people going to say and what the brethren going to say, what the sister going to say, or he cheating. No. Do you, be you. On my wall right here, it says, be you. I'm a singer and I'm a preacher, and I'm going to try my best to do both. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And hopefully I can come back one day.
Listen, I'm already going to put you on the schedule. You got to come back, because we didn't even get into spirituals. We didn't get into genres. So you're going to have to come back.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Next time I want to talk about that Black theology, man. So
come on.
Yeah, bring me back. I'll be on it.
Listen, I'm going to bring you back. And I just want to thank you so much for accepting my invitation and for making the time. I know that you are busy. And so I just wanted to say thank you. And so it's been a good night. Yeah, Theology in 30 audience, y'all know we don't disappoint. We always bring you something engaging. And so this is Theology in 30 and Hope TV. We are the House of Hope Atlanta, and our pastor is Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. And we believe that life with God is better in every way, every day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.